Hello, my fellow HR professionals. This is Eric from Standard Consult. I am a data analyst and also a Microsoft Office specialist. I would like to invite you to our 2023 Data Analytics course for HR professionals. This training seeks to equip the individual with the various tools and skills that are needed to become a professional HR analyst. The training will cover three most important aspects when it comes to data analytics. That is the Microsoft Excel, HR matrices, and also dashboard. Under the Microsoft Excel, we'll be looking at the various functions and formulas that are necessary or that are needed to become a professional data analyst. We'll look at the various charts that are needed when it comes to dashboard. And we'll also look at the various functions and techniques that we can employ to help us analyze our data, especially pivot tables. We'll also go on and look at the various HR matrices that we can use to measure the performance of our employees and also the performance of the company. We'll look at example, cost per hire, we'll look at revenue per employee, we'll look at the attrition periods and all that. Lastly, but not the least, we'll go on to look at how to create dashboard for decision making and also how to present your data in a way that is globally accepted for management. We'll look at some dashboard, including the HR management dashboard, which will come out beautiful like this. Then we'll also look at, as a group, we'll also decide to look at something on COVID and see how we can present it in a way that we can make meaningful decision out of it. One thing I know for sure is that gives you value for money. I would like to see you all in our next training. Thank you.
Hello. Good day to all our cherished listeners. You may be listening to us from all over the place. So it's good morning, it's good evening, and good afternoon to all our cherished listeners. I'm so happy to be here with you again to digest very pertinent issues on that borders on human resource management. Today we're going to be speaking on the issue that has been a great border, termination. But before we go there, let me just give you a bit of a background of HR Digest. Yeah, welcome to today's episode. We're usually here, we gather here to learn. I'm tempted to say we gather by the fireside to digest very pertinent issues. And today we're going to look at termination, like I said before, and we're going to have a very seasoned speaker with us. HR Digest is brought to you by Sedat Consult. And Sedat Consult, we make sure that your HR needs are taken care of. It's a one-stop shop for all your HR needs. We can be reached for consultancy services on 0244629245. We are usually supported by Quick Fix. It's a creative organization. They are into they are into printing needs, they are into designing. And so you want to design something awesome, just contact them on 05520 Quick Fix is the one place to go for all your printing needs. We would like to acknowledge our cherished listeners. So as we go along, you have a question, just drop it in the comment section. If you have, you want to tell us where you are listening in from, and we'll acknowledge you. So once again, welcome. And I would quickly want us to look at who Mr. Stephen Kisi, Osei Kisi is. Who is Mr. Osei Kisi? Stephen Osei Kisi is the head of Greater Accra Regional Secretariat of the National Labour Commission. He holds a master's degree in alternative dispute resolution from the University of Ghana, Legon. Mr. Osei Kisi has rich experience in handling industrial relation issues, which is one of the issues that bothers this employer-employee relationship. His passion is to help employers and workers find best ways to create an atmosphere of coexistence to increase productivity. So at this point, I would want us to warmly welcome our seasoned speaker, Mr. Stephen Osei Kisi, so we can look into the issues on the table. So can we have Mr. Stephen Osei Kisi join us if he is online at the moment? Right, so we're going to be looking at the issue of termination. I know it's an issue that really bothers people. Usually when we are signing contracts as employees, all we are looking out for is how much are we going to be paid, what are the benefits. We don't look at the end of our period, the end of our term, the end of a life cycle with an employer. And so what happens is that when that time comes, we are found wanting. I think we've just been joined by Mr. Stephen Osei Kisi. Hello, Mr. Osei Kisi, you're welcome and good to meet you.
Yes, hello, good afternoon to everybody. Forgive me, I was having a little challenge with my network, but it looks to be okay now. So I'm praying that it stays stable.
Yes, that's awesome. So we are happy to have you because we know we're going to have an awesome time. We're going to have an awesome time with you learning about what we need to do, what we need to do, as employers, and what we need to do as employees. Okay, so the issue on the table is termination. And we want you to explain to us, tell us, what does termination mean for both parties?
Okay, so just by way of a little introduction, usually for every 10 complaints that we receive from the Labour Commission, out of the 10 complaints relates to issues bordering on termination. So it's a good idea that we are bringing this discussion up, so that what it would mean if you conduct a termination, the likely consequence arising out of any other termination action. So a big thank you to you and your enterprise for putting this together. Now, ideally, what terminations do is that they bring the employment relationship to an end. And so you would find that if either initiated by the employer or it can also be initiated by the worker through resignation. Resignation is also a form of termination, and so, like I said, it can be initiated by either party in the employment relationship. The same way you can also say that redundancy is a form of termination because it brings the employment relationship to an end. So ideally, any action that would lead to a cessation of the employment relationship can be considered as termination.
Mr. Casey, are you?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you.
Okay. So I was explaining earlier that terminations in general would mean any action that would bring the employment relationship to an end. And so it's an action that can be initiated by the employer or the employee, and other type of grounds that will constitute a termination would include redundancies by themselves. It would include resignations. It can also include either voluntary when you have to voluntary retirement or compulsory retirement. All of these instances would form a termination exercise.
Right. Okay. Section 63 of the Labor Act clearly states that the employment of a worker shall not be unfairly terminated by the worker's employer. And so it means that there is something that is known as unfair termination, and there's something that's known as fair termination. And so we want you to take us into that. What does it mean to have terminated somebody fairly? And what does it mean that you have terminated somebody unfairly? If you can hear me, Mr. Kisi. All right, so whilst we are still waiting for Mr. Kisi's internet to settle, we want to warmly welcome Josephine Aqua. She says, "Good afternoon, I'm Josephine. I'm joining you from Takoradi. Great to have you again." Thank you, Josephine. Okay, we have Mr. Kisi in the house again. I think some of you have to start going to some kind of prayer to stabilize this internet. I am not sure.
I'm out of town. Ghana is not only Accra, unfortunately. So some of the libraries we get to end. Okay, so like and that is the labor law has certain instances that it will consider to amount to a fair termination, and also instances where it would consider certain actions to be unfair. Now, even before we go into this whole argument of what will constitute a fair termination, what will constitute an unfair termination, we should establish certain grounds before we can even commence the whole termination exercise in the first place. And so if you look at section 15 of the law, it sets out grounds that must be respected before a termination exercise can take place. So you don't just get up and say you're terminating, or the law will not say that this action would be a fair termination or unfair termination if it hasn't given some attention to the grounds that would give room for termination to even take place to even take place. And so you find that under section 15 of the labor law, it says that it lists a number of grounds for which would require termination. Now, inclusive of those grounds is either it is done by mutual agreement between the parties in the employment relationship, or it is done by the worker on grounds of ill treatment, or sexual harassment. Again, if an employee dies, then automatically and then it can also be on the instance where an employee is deemed medically unfit to work, or it can also be on the instance
Oh, wow.
of
It's unfortunate. I cannot hear you clearly. I don't know about our listeners. Can we get some feedback
being
from our
involved either
listeners
in an
whether they are
accident
hearing clearly?
or the employee is shown to.
So I think basically what Mr. Osekisi has been trying to put across is the conditions or the grounds on which terminations can occur. And it's all contained in Section 15, as he rightly mentioned, in the Labor Act. And so it is important that before any termination is started, Mr. Kisi, are we stable now? All of those conditions are met, or one of them, two of them, whatever it is, depending on the issue at stake, why termination has to occur. That has to happen for to be a ground on which termination will be done. And I believe, if I heard him right, he was talking about ability of the worker to perform their work. It could be on ill health. It could be on death, basis of death. I mean, that automatically terminates the employment relationship. It could be a situation of a business decision, which is redundancy usually. And so there are grounds on which termination should occur. Now let's go back to our listeners. We have Mabel Addy. Mabel is joining us from Dansuma. We have Mr. Kisi also joining us from Tema. This is Michael Kisi, okay, not our speaker. Mr. Kisi, it's good to see you again or to hear from you. Stephen Intefo is joining us from Koforidia. Yes. Stephen says his line keeps on dropping. Yes, Stephen, we are working on that. We hope that he gets back very quickly to join us. So there's one question that I would want to ask Mr. Osei Kisi when he gets back, and I pray that he can give us a very, a good background to that. And we see most people don't know about constructive terminations, but there's something that is known as constructive termination, which is usually not contained in the Labor Act, I believe, or maybe there's some information hidden in there which you can delve into. But constructive termination is a very silent thing that a lot of workers suffer and they don't have redress to. So maybe it's something that we would want to ask Mr. Kisi about. So let's hope that his internet comes on, stable. Yvonne, it's good to see you. Yvonne Quintin Kofi is joining us from Osu. Right, and we have Vikram Dusoye. He said there's noise at the background. Vikram, if you can tell us where you are joining us from, that would be awesome, whilst we wait for our speakers' internet to stabilize.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
All right, so welcome back. I believe that Mr. Stephen Osaikis' network is much stable now. So thank you, Susan Livingston Entry, for joining us. She says she's joining us from New Botiano. I'm with you, Steve, but your network is challenging. Hi, Steve. So we can pick up from where we left off, Mr. Osaikis, if you can hear me. Right. Okay. Yes, I see you come across as stable now. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So can we pick up from where we were? Then you were telling us
Yes.
about the provisions in section 15 that create
Yes.
the grounds for termination.
Exactly. So like I was saying earlier, those grounds must first be satisfied before, if we want to do or want to carry out any termination exercise, we must look at whether our exercise will fit into those very conditions or they would not. Because at some point, if an issue arises out of the termination, those are some of the areas that would be looked at to see if they were properly satisfied before the terminations took place. So once we satisfy ourselves with the provisions under section 15, then we can look at what section 17 says in terms of giving appropriate notice. So that if the relationship is that which goes beyond 3 years, you give a month's notice. And then if it is less than 3 years, you give 2 weeks notice. That is the minimum requirement in law. And so you would find that in some employment letters, you discover that the notice period is above 1 month, and the law allows that. So if whatever provisions the employer puts in the contract of employment is such that it goes to satisfy every other person's interest, then there is no problem. So long as it is not below the minimum that the law has envisaged, then we are good to go. And so you will find that earlier you mentioned that there are certain provisions under section 62 and 63 which talks about fair and unfair termination. And so
Yeah.
if you look at 62 is telling us that your employment when terminated would be considered fair on a number of grounds. So the law lists 4 particular grounds. The first is that the worker is incompetent or lacks the qualification in relation to the work for which the worker was employed. If today you employ a secretary and the secretary is good in using typewriters, at the time that you employed the secretary, she was good at using typewriters. With the advent of computers and even new artificial intelligence programs in the market now, you cannot now say that because the secretary, at the time you employed the secretary came in with a typewriting certificate, and so somebody who now has some certificate from any of these ICT training institutions is more qualified than your secretary, and therefore you are terminating that person. That would constitute an unfair termination, because per that ground, you can't, because at the time that you were employing, the law considers that the person had the requisite qualification to be in that role. So it is on you, an employer, to make sure that you train the person to catch up with the current trends, but you don't let the person go because in your estimation the person is not meeting up to current trends as we have now. The second ground is proving misconduct. And I keep saying that if you envisage terminating somebody on misconduct, that misconduct must be proven. So you don't get up in the morning and say, because Kofi worked in a certain way, he has misconducted himself, and so you are going to terminate Kofi's employment. Or Kofi wore a particular shirt that you don't like, or he might have mentioned in a statement that makes you feel uncomfortable, and so you say you're terminating on misconduct. It must be proving that that particular statement or that particular work or that particular dress amounts to a misconduct. Otherwise, if the person decides to take the issue up with either go to court or come to the National Labour Commission, you, the employer, would have questions to answer, because you must show proof that that particular incident was one that qualifies in your books and has been proven to be a misconduct before you exact the termination. And then you find another third ground being redundancy under Section 65. And then due to certain legal restrictions that have been imposed on the worker. So it prevents the worker from working. So let's say we work together and I find myself doing something that is against the law. And so the law will say that for this particular action or for this particular act you have committed, we would have to confine you or put you in prison. At the time of being sentenced, I might not have lost my job. But for the simple fact that the law has said for this particular action, you have to be confined in a prison, it means that it can be a ground for my employer to say, okay, then based on this decision from the court, we cannot continue to work with you anymore. And that will be considered a fair termination. I hope that the explanation on fair termination is pretty clear for all of us now.
Well, yes, but for me, I'm sure that we'll be hearing from our listeners very soon. But the example
Okay.
you gave of the secretary being incompetent because of maybe introduction of new technology. Okay, in that case, you expect that the law requires you train and probably retrain. So in a case where you have trained and still
Yes.
the person doesn't seem to, picking up or be conversant with the new technology, in that case, would it be a fair ground for termination, or it will still require some more effort from the employer?
Well, the employer would have to do more.
I'm
That
not sure I
is
can
why
hear
you will
you.
find that in a lot of enterprises, there are avenues or there are programs put into measure
Okay.
the performance of every worker in terms of conducting an appraisal. So if you have trained and retrained and you are not getting it, can you hear me now? Hello.
Okay. I don't seem to hear Mr. Saikisi, unfortunately. So the import I have of what he's trying to say, right. So we have Vikram So yeah, he says that before alleging someone of misconduct, an internal investigation should be carried out, and the person should be made aware of the charges. I'm sure that's what you want to say, Vikram. Yes, I'm sure that is what Mr. Osekis is trying to put across. That it is not enough to just say that the person has misconducted himself. It is the onus lies on the employer to prove. And most of the time, what I have known also as a practitioner is that there must be documentation to that effect. There must have been probably a disciplinary action that shows that you've taken the person through the processes that you have, contained, you have put in your condition of service, that if a person conducts themselves on these grounds, on that grounds, this is the process that the person must go through to, get to the point where you will determine by the result of the disciplinary action that the person should be terminated or punished as may be appropriate. Sometimes when we use the word punish, people think it's too harsh, so maybe they prefer the word sanction. So the appropriate sanction would then be meted out to the person. And I guess it should be the same thing with training. So if you train and retrain and it shows that the person is simply not trainable, and you have every record to show that the person has been trained, every effort has been made by the organization to make that person, be able to adjust to the new technology, it means that then the company might have a ground on which they can do that kind of they can activate termination. Okay, so I don't know if Mr. Kisi can hear us, but I hope that he's joining from a computer. I think StreamYard usually doesn't work very well on phones. So if Mr. Kisi is hearing us, maybe he wants to join us using a computer, and that might be more stable for us. So those are the two examples that Mr. Kisi has joined us again. Right, awesome. So Mr. Kisi is trying to join us, maybe using a computer. Let's see. Yeah, we have Melly and Angel. I think that is the name. Forgive me if I'm not pronouncing it rightly. It says insubordination and truancy. Is it fair after 8 years of work?
Hello.
Okay, if you can, yes. Hello, Mr. Sekisi. Can you hear us? Okay. So I think Melly Angel, if you want to reconstitute your request, your question, it would help me, because all I'm saying is insubordination and truancy. Is it fair after 8 years of work? Maybe what you want to say is, it fair to terminate somebody for insubordination and truancy after 8 years of working with an employer? We'll look at that if once we get Mr. Osekisi back on the line. What process would you go through on vacation of post? Okay, we'll look at that. We have Senna Sherry Jikunu joining us from Accra. Senna, you are warmly welcome. What process would you go through on vacation of post while we wait on for Mr. Osekisi to join us? Kingsley Tre is the one asking that question. Kingsley, I believe that for somebody to vacate the post, you must have something, a provision in your condition of service that states that if you vacate your post for so many days, this is the consequence. And I know most organizations will say continuously for 5 days, others will say continuously for 10 days, which I have come across. And once you do that, there will be some termination. And if that is not contained and it is just that somebody has vacated themselves and you take it upon yourself to just activate some kind of a clause, one of the things that Labor Commission might want to know is that, has it ever happened in your organization? When it happened, how did you go about it? So there must be also a precedent that you have set. That would also be a support when you get to the Labor Commission to be able to defend yourself why you took that process. But usually vacation of post, if it's already contained your condition of service, then you are safe to apply whatever it is that is contained there. I believe when Mr. Osaikisi joins us, he'll give us more information on that. Then we are looking at insubordination and truancy. I believe that insubordination is usually contained in most conditions of service as a gross misconduct. And truancy, of course, is also a form of, I would say, a gross misconduct, because I don't see why somebody would work for 8 years and begin to be truant and begin to be insubordinate. There must be other underlying conditions which the employer should be interested to know, even if they would go through a process, probably a disciplinary process, to terminate that person. The employer should be ready to understand what is happening there, because once somebody is doing that after 8 years of working with you, there must be some underlying condition. It must be disgruntled. There must be something that is causing them to do that. So you want to find out what it is, so you don't have that repeated by other workers, as it were. And it's that one bad nut spoils the whole nut, and so you don't take it for granted. And that is my thought on that. And so we would hope would give us some more information on that when he joins us.
Hello.
So keep your questions coming in. Let us know where you are listening. I believe that this is a topic that we'll have to take again, because it's not been, the internet has not been stable for our resource person, and so it's not been as effective as we wanted it to be. So I am asking that we'll take it again. I'm sure my producers are listening to us. So let's see, let's acknowledge our Phoenix, the Phoenix Creatives. Quick fix, quick fix, quick fix, quick fix. It is quick fix creatives. You can contact them on 0550900057. 0552090057. I'm sure that you see our artwork and you are wondering who is this producing these awesome artworks for Sedat Consult. That is it. Sedat Consult, we are the consultant, the one-stop a consultant to go to for all your HR needs. Are you looking at termination, looking at payroll, are you looking at training? Whatever you're looking at, that is Sedat Consult. You are sure to have value for your money. And so Sedat Consult brings to you HR Digest every Sunday at 4 p.m. Unfortunately, today we are having a challenge with the internet connectivity of our resource person, but we are sure to bring this to you again, I believe. So let's see what we can be doing whilst we wait for our resource person to get on board. Mr. Producer, maybe you want us let us take a break at this point. We can take a quick break and get back in. Yeah. Right.
Hello, my fellow HR professionals. This is Eric from Sedat Consult. I am a data analyst and also a Microsoft Office specialist. I would like to invite you to our 2023 Data Analytics course for HR professionals. This training seeks to equip the individual with the various tools and skills that are needed to become a professional HR analyst. The training will cover three most important aspects when it comes to data analytics. That is the Microsoft Excel, HR matrices, and also dashboard. Under the Microsoft Excel, we'll be looking at the various functions and formulas that are necessary or that are needed to become a professional data analyst. We'll look at the various charts that are needed when it comes to dashboard. And we'll also look at the various functions and techniques that we can employ to help us analyze our data, especially pivot tables. We'll also go on and look at the various HR metrics that we can use to measure the performance of our employees and also the performance of the company. We'll look at example, cost per hire, we'll look at revenue per employee, we'll look at the attrition periods and all that. Lastly, but not the least, we'll go on to look at how to create dashboard for decision making and also how to present your data in a way that is globally accepted for management. We'll look at some dashboard, including the HR management dashboard, which will come out beautiful like this. Then we'll also look at, as a group, we'll also decide to look at something on COVID and see how we can present it in a way that we can make meaningful decision out of it. One thing I know for sure is that gives you value for money. I would like to see you all in our next training. Thank you.
Hello.
Okay.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome back.
Yes. Hello, madam.
I think that our time is fast spent and the internet has not been very stable.
At
But
all.
I see Mondi is asking, how can we treat termination during probation? I can speak a little bit to that, but I'm sure that when we get Mr. Stephen Osekisi back another time, we will look at all the questions that came up. Mondi, with termination during probation periods are periods when you are getting to know the employer is getting to know you. And so there's also normally provisions in the contract of employment or Right, welcome back. Just a few minutes and we'll be out of here. So thank you all for being patient with us listening. We are very sorry for the unstable internet, unfortunately. Now, we just quickly want to let you know that we are having HR Analytics on the 27th and 20 to 26th of May at the Crystal Palm Hotels. Trust me, I can testify about this. It is not a training that you want to what you want to miss. Sorry. You want to miss if you are looking at the next level of your career as an HR practitioner. It's a training you want to have. And trust me, SEDAT consult trainings are hands-on, they are practical. You will not regret. You have value for your money. And so the link has been shared in the comment section. As many of you as are interested should kindly just click on it, register. We'll reach out to you and you can register to be a part of it. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining us. We are sure to bring this back to you another time. And so we just want to bring this today's, yes, we'll make it up next week. Want to bring today's session to a close at this point. Thank you, our generals, our wonderful listeners. Thank you so much. So that is it for today. Thank you and see you next week.